Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Danielle Walker. I am the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Village of Oak Park. And welcome to our first annual Black History Month event. Won't take up too much time, but I just want to let everyone know that feel free to get as much food as it's still out. There's a selfie booth in the back corner. Face painting. I'm really excited to see the many different face paintings for everyone, right? And so, regardless of age, and so I appreciate everyone partaking in the different events. We have a wonderful program set up for you all today. As you also see on your tables, there's educational materials and just things to really have a really engaging and interactive event, a community event today. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay, already got the energy. All right. And so I just wanted to state that, just thank everyone for coming out. Again, we worked really hard and really excited for this wonderful presentation, programming, great performers, great speakers that we have for you all today. So again, feel free to get food, to move in and out of the room. Bathrooms are upstairs. We have an elevator and all of that to make sure it's accessible. And with that, I will welcome our village manager, Kevin Jackson, to the stage.
Indicated, I want to welcome you to the inaugural Black History Month Honor Celebration, hosted by the Village of Oak Park. We appreciate everyone's interest in joining us today to celebrate this historic moment with this new event in our community. I just want to start out by acknowledging we do have some dignitaries with us here this afternoon. I want to acknowledge our village president, President Skaman, Vicky Skaman. We have trustee Lucia Robinson. Trustee Susan Buchanan is here. And I think Trustee Paracott is on his way. And I also want to acknowledge we have a former trustee, David Sokol, and former village clerk, Sandra Sokol, here with us this afternoon. We have some District 200 high school officials here. We have Superintendent Dr. Greg Johnson, and Oak Park River Forest High School Principal Dr. Linda Parker. Linda's special name. My wife's name is Linda, and you spell it the same way. Lynda. Hey, look, I just wanted to make one point here. I just really, and this is just for some people common knowledge, but for most people common knowledge, like Black History, celebrating Black History was initiated by Carter G. Woodson nearly 100 years ago, right, in 1926. So that means in 3 years exactly, it'll be 100 years. So from 1926 to 1976, in 1976, the Ford administration formally acknowledged Black History Month, right? So that was nearly 50 years ago. So between 1926 and 1976, 50 years of history. We don't have a lot of time today, so I don't want to talk about everything that's happened between that period of time, but I think all of you can imagine. So a lot happened between that period of time that corresponds with the reason why we're doing this, and the reason why we're here today. So we're 3 years shy of 50 years from 1976. So 3 years from now, it would be interesting to look back to understand what have we accomplished in that 50 years, post-1976. Just something to think about, but definitely want to pay tribute and acknowledge and lift up Carter G. Woodson for having the vision, the foresight, the leadership, and most importantly, making a sacrifice to make sure that we're acknowledging our history. And then I want to acknowledge our village board. So there is a lot of history around cultural heritage and Black history here in the village, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the village board recently has taken a new direction and ventured into a territory of trying to, I think, strengthen our efforts in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I just want to take just a moment to thank and acknowledge our village board for investing in supporting substantially our diversity, equity, and inclusion programming and making this inaugural event possible and others that we're going to be striving to uplift and celebrate cultural heritage of the village, the entire village. So thank you. So just some final thoughts here, and then we'll just go ahead and get into the programming. So in 2022, we did achieve, as a community, some pretty substantial milestones, and I just want to acknowledge it. I can't take credit for them. I've been here 11 months, but the village board has been working very assertively to really make some strides in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want to acknowledge some of the milestones that have been made. We have, the board has hired the first black village manager in its 120-year history, and I guess that would be yours truly. I thank them for that. You know, I've been working in public service for 25 years, and I just want to make a brief statement about this. You know, there are any number of pathways to becoming a CEO or becoming a chief executive officer of a city or corporation. There are some that are just interested in the job itself, but then there are others who are interested in just service. And so I don't want to lose the opportunity to really re-articulate, because I expressed this when I came to the village, that I am just so humbled and excited about the opportunity to continue to serve Oak Park because of the alignment with my values. You know, what we're doing today, I think, is a marker of that. And so I just wanted to restate that. I've said it over and over again. I think the reason I'm here is because of the values that this community uplifts. So a second milestone I want to highlight this afternoon before we get started is we hired our first female police chief in 2022. Natalia Johnson. Stand up. And lastly, and not unimportantly, we hired our first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Dr. Danielle Walker. Now, don't be bashful, Dr. Walker, and I want to emphasize that. Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. She is on my management team. She's not the coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And I'm just going to close out. I really want to thank her for the short time that she's been here. She's hit the ground running. She's working with all our partners. She's moving these programs forward. She could have simply waited to do something like this until next year. We had a better opportunity to spend some more time with it. She didn't want to. She wanted to get this going. And I'm excited about this. I'm excited about everything she's going to do for the village and working with the community and working with our administration and our board. So thank you all. I hope you guys enjoy the program today.
Thank you so much. My name is Frank Lipo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Historical Society of Oak Park and River Forest. We operate Oak Park River Forest Museum at the corner of Lake and Lombard. And I was asked specifically to talk about the so-called Symphony Incident in 1963. The big news in Oak Park in this month, in February of 1963. As I mentioned to Dr. Walker and to actually earlier to several other folks, Trustee Buchanan and I were just talking about this beforehand, it's hard for me to really break off history and say it's just one incident, right? There's always a backstory and there's always moving forward. And a lot of the things I'm saying today, you all have your own personal experiences related to some things I'm talking about. So I'm just kind of give you a broad overview. I'm going to, oops, there we go. So jumping into the community's history, those of you who are less aware perhaps that there have been black residents of Oak Park since the earliest days, as early as the 1880s, documented local residents. A small community through much of that time. But here's the 1905 photograph of the Mount Carmel Baptist Church, located on today's Westgate. And just recently, some of you in the room helped make possible a plaque at that location. And I think it's important to remember that deep story, that backstory. Oak Park's black population at its highest point before modern times, so to speak, was 1920 with about 170 black residents. And so the community had this start and had this community that people were worshiping, gathering people together. The community as a whole, and I'll just sort of move on here, yeah, there was discrimination. I'm sorry for these offensive images. These are, this community, like so many communities in the United States, had minstrel shows, even sometimes churches, or local businesses using racially insensitive and discriminatory images. We had a chapter of the KKK in the 1920s. Again, very disturbing. And in that time frame, this KKK of the 1920s was as much anti-immigrant, anti-black, anti-anyone that they didn't think were true Americans, right? So that horrible chapter. Yet, again, at the same time, a lot of Oak Park institutions, again, very small percentage of black populations, black population, but local churches, the First Congregational Church, one of the predecessor churches of First United today, brought in Zora Neale Thurston, James Weldon Johnson, Langston Hughes, Paul Robeson, earlier Ida B. Wells, and a number of other, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. The idea that there was really this, in the community, there was both some acceptance, unlike some communities, the so-called sundown towns, where black folks were allowed to work in the community, but were not allowed to live. And so Oak Park did have that. Sometimes I think of it as more, not a sundown town, but kind of a twilight town. The idea that there were these opportunities. There were African-American residents that were owning their own property, had their own businesses, and yet there also was this underlying discrimination of American society and among individual folks. And yet a lot of times the churches and other community institutions were trying to rise above that. So there's always this mixed, sort of acceptance of black residents, which is, and the image on the left is when Westgate was redeveloped into a sort of modern business area. The black church's property was purchased, and the sort of black church sort of faded into memory locally. There were black graduates of the high school, actually this year, 100 years ago, in 1923, there were 2 black graduates of the high school. So Oak Park River Forest, the schools were racially integrated. This was a Lewis Pope, a graduate of the class of 1938, who was at that point the only black player on the football team. They were undefeated, and yet when the team went on to play an exhibition game in Miami, he was left behind because the people who invited the team did not want a black player to play at the Orange Bowl in Miami. So again, acceptance, opportunities, and also discrimination. Of course, Dr. Julian, all of these individual slides, I could tell a whole half-hour story, right? So I'm just sort of touching to give you some background. Dr. Julian, of course, coming here in 1950, twice with his wife, his 2 children, an adoptive a nephew, the family adopted, and twice the house was attacked. A horrible moment. And again, though, you start seeing the newspaper in the weeks afterward, people writing, letters to the editor and showing up at the village board saying, this is not who we are. This is not who Oak Park is, but what is Oak Park, then or now? A community that many of us love, but a community that's flawed. A community that could be better, and that we're sort of struggling in today, in 2023, looking at how, as village manager said a few minutes ago, where will we be 50 years from now or 20 years from now, right? That kind of continuum of history. So now, to come up to the moment, literally in February of 1963, the Oak Park Symphony Orchestra, Oak Park River Forest Symphony Orchestra, Milton Priest was a conductor. He was a performer, a violist at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and he had been the conductor and of the Oak Park River Forest Symphony Orchestra for 8 years at this point. In December of 1962, through a mutual acquaintance, a young 23-year-old violinist named Carol Anderson, you can see her there on the right image, on the left, the right image there, who was a native of Wilmington, Delaware, had gone to the Boston Conservatory of Music, was living on the south side of Chicago at that point, working for Cook County Public Aid as a caseworker. And she, like so many other musicians, was starting to perform in different community orchestras, or looking into that as she was trying to build her career. And she contacted Milton Preves and said, I understand that you're going to be practicing Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony. I've never done that work. I'd like to come to the practice, and I'm not trying to get into the symphony at this point. I just want to have the opportunity. So in December of 1962, Milton Preves said, sure, come on by. She practiced, and then a few weeks went by, and sometime, we think in January, the head of the symphony, who was the chief cellist, her name was Marie Palmer. She was new as the chair of the symphony board, just kind of taking over that role. And she got wind of this. Well, she would have seen her at the practice, right? Because she was a member of the symphony, of the Oak Park River Forest Symphony Orchestra. And what she did is she reached out to Carol Anderson and said, just so you know, we don't have an integrated orchestra. And the community's not really interested in that. And good luck to you, but I just didn't want to raise your expectations. We're not activists. The community's not ready for this somehow. Again, she's saying this, there's been no community survey of any sort, right? What happens is, Carol Anderson tells Milton Preves, and he says, well, first of all, that's completely unacceptable. I'm going to resign as the head of the symphony, as the conductor of the symphony, pardon me. And he says, this is something that's just I'm not going to stand for. And he starts talking to his fellow members of the symphony, and 25 became 38. A number of the members of the symphony start saying, we don't want to be part of this if that's, who said that we can't have an integrated symphony? So here you see a moment in time. The shorthand is she was blocked from performing at the symphony, but you do see the pushback. You see people who feel differently in the community, who want it to be a different outcome. And as it gets into a couple of these, the Chicago Daily News, which was really covering heavily in all the Chicago papers after a while. The local newspaper at that time, the Oak Leaves, was sort of downplaying it, but the Chicago Metro paper, it gets out as a national story. She's from Wilmington, Delaware, I mentioned, and she, the next month, ends up being on the cover of Jet magazine, which is sort of the most prominent African American magazine of the time, based here in Chicago. And what happens is the painful side of this, and later on, years later, a local journalist, actually Ken Trainer from the Journal, reached out and tracked her down and said, what was happening from your perspective? And she said it was very odd because the head of the symphony, Marie Palmer, kept on putting her foot in the mouth and making it worse and worse. She was saying things that she was sort of alluding a little bit to his Jewishness. He actually happened to be a Jewish, the conductor, Milton Preves, and she kind of made it like it's an administrative thing. He's stepping over his bounds. He's not allowed to hire performers, and yet that was never really quite an issue, really, right? So the great thing from a community building and the bridge at a time, by the 1960 census, Oak Park's black population from that high of 170 in the 1920 census had dropped down to 57. And that included, of course, the Julian family, right? So in the 50s, there had been at certain points, only a couple black students at the high school, the Julian, Percy Julian Jr. and his sister Faith. And so there was this sense that the black community had sort of dispersed, had been maybe partially dispersed more actively. It was certainly not welcomed in the way they could have been. And a lot of people of goodwill, including the churches and the institutions, again, churches and synagogues, started to sort of say, wait a second, there's all kinds of emergency meetings called during this time. And the high school, Oak Park River Forest High School, hosted the symphony, and the woman who was the head of the school board, president of the school board, her name is Elsie Jacobson, very involved in the community in many ways. In fact, she ended up being one of the founders of the Historical Society in the late 60s. And she talked to her fellow members of the board, I'm not sure if it's at a board or sort of in between, and basically said, if they don't let her play, they won't be welcome at the high school anymore. So you have people who are actually standing up and saying, this is not something that this community stands for. So what happened was, it went from the chair of the symphony board trying to control things behind the scenes and keep out and showing her own biases and her own discrimination, and instead it sort of sparked this sense that this is injustice. This is not what the community stands for. And so what happened is he quit, other people quit, and yet some of these religious leaders, the high school folks, other people who kind of were coming together in the community said, she's got to perform, and Milton Priest can be conduct one last time, but only if Marie Palmer apologizes to them publicly and says she doesn't speak for the whole community. Now, we're talking at a time, as we'll see later in the 60s, not everyone in Oak Park certainly is supportive of black residents, of black neighbors, etc. But you're seeing this bad thing, this sort of frankly embarrassing thing for the village, as a lot of leaders start seeing too, not just because it's right or wrong, but also this is not our public image, and this is not who most of us are, or many of us are, right? So they end up having this performance, and in February, it's hard to say from the news coverage, so I'm double checking a couple things. Literally, I think it might have been February 17th, so certainly like this week of 1963, so 60 years ago this week, she performs, they have a big ovation, and afterward, basically they say, well, will you stay now? And he says, now it's just soured for me. I'm not going to stay as conductor anymore. And she says, I was only sort of there because he was nice enough to let me practice with the symphony. And so she said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So basically, and this big blow up, maybe it's hard for somebody to see in the back of the room. It was revealed Tuesday that the Oak Park River Forest Consolidated High School Board members had considered the possibility of evicting the orchestra from its home if discrimination had continued. We had not taken action, but we feel this would have been a strong possibility, said Mrs. Earl Jacobson. We're in charge of renting the auditorium. We would not want discrimination in our school. And you see the interfaith group of clergymen met for 2 hours Monday night in Oak Park, YMCA at the request of the pastor of First Congregational Church. First Congregational Church that I remembered earlier, they had been having regular speaker series going back into the 30s, having black, literati and performers, and just trying to at least have some window into people who weren't the 99.9% white population of the community at that time. So, essentially, what happened after this? Okay, so and I'm just going to kind of quickly bring this forward. Carol Anderson, goes on that summer. She performed in the Wheaton Community Orchestra in their summer series. She ended up moving on to different places, but she ended up being the head of the Portland Children's Symphony, talking about moving ahead in our agenda today and talking about the youth, that she went on and having this experience as a 23-year-old, she ended up doing that. But I'm going to sort of, this is from the Daily News. But perhaps it'll serve a good purpose. It demonstrated the volume of support on tap for fighters against discrimination. It provided an example of the rebuke awaiting those who attempt to impose their prejudices upon the rest of the community. So this idea of, and some of you are aware of that in your own lives, sometimes when something bad happens, is there a chance to turn that into something better or to make, so the idea that this is somehow, it starts off talking about that people in the South, now this is 1963. The national headlines are freedom riders. The national headlines are this newish, certainly to a lot of people, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? So this is all happening at the same time. So this is kind of the start of Oak Park's civil rights era in the 60s. And the next month, I'm going to stop there for a second. Actually, the next month, I'm just going to read to you what the village board does. The village board, on March 18th, 1963, they created a commission on human relations. That evolved into what we know today as the Community Relations Commission. The village board had earlier stepped into the symphony fray, issuing a statement before the concert. Quote, and I just want to read this in its entirety. The Oak Park Village Board deplores public statements by Mrs. Gustav Palmer that the community would withdraw its support of the orchestra in the event a Negro was permitted to be a member. The president and members of the Board of Trustees do not individually accept these views and do not believe they represent the views of the community. A committee on community relations will be appointed forthwith to deal with the human relations problem. And that becomes a major public tool between 1963 and 1968, the passage of the Fair Housing Ordinance. Separately, the next year, this ad is put into the Oakley's newspaper and other newspapers, the right of all people to live where they choose. 1,000 people, in the box in the right, they say, this is only the people we could get on a short deadline. So it's a little bit hard to read this, so I'm just going to say, this is the predecessor of today's diversity statement or equity statement the village board does every after a new election. We, the undersigned residents of Oak Park and River Forest, believing in the essential oneness of humankind and seeking to foster such unity in our communities, do hereby declare that we want residents in our village to be open, to anyone interested in sharing our benefits and responsibilities, regardless of race, color, creed, or national origin, that we believe in equal opportunity for all in the fields of education, business, and the professions, in harmony with constitutional guarantees of equal rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It goes on. So this idea of sparking, and then that Citizens Committee for Human Rights is the sort of grassroots citizen group that's kind of paired with the public Human Relations Commission to lay the groundwork for fair housing in the community. And I'm just going to finish up by saying a couple things. So what happens in 63, we're talking about the Symphony incident. 64, the Citizens Committee for Human Rights. The Robinette family moves to town. Mac and Harriet are still living in the same home in Oak Park. All these years later, they have to use a straw buyer to buy their home, a white family that sells the house to them because they were facing discrimination, and yet that's what's faced by, they themselves march in the 1966 Fair Housing marches. We see equal service from realtors. The Community Relations Commission, there's Virginia Casson, later to go on village clerk, saying when there's move-ins of black families, encouraging the neighbors to welcome them. We have an eye on you. We're trying to be supportive of these new residents in an era of white flight. It was my pleasure to know, of course, the Robinettes are still living in the same house they bought in 1965. Sherlyn Reed went on to become Community Relations Director. She and her husband bought their house in 1968 after the Fair Housing Ordinance with a conventional mortgage. Bobby Raymond, the Housing Center and the Citizens Committee Human Rights. Ginny Casson on the first Human Relations Commission. And then that's John Dwyer, the chair of the first Human Relations Commission. So how does that go today? Going on to the youth, right? Children coming to Oak Park River Forest Museum from the local schools, learning about some of these stories, seeing these banners on display, and to me, that's the real story, is that when things happen, are we as a community, our leaders, the community in a grassroots way, are we going to step forward and keep on meeting the challenge and trying to be responsive? And yes, we're not perfect, we're very imperfect, but yet we often, and I think in a majority way in the community, have really embraced this idea of building a diverse community. So I'm sorry I'm going a little bit over, I got excited. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today, and thanks.
Oh my goodness, that was such a wonderful overview of just Carol Anderson and our history. So with that, I am going to welcome our first performer for our program, Wendy Indy of Black Violins.
Rejoice,
so much to Wendy Indy. Fun fact. I had shared with Wendy Indy that I also play the violin. And I was like, oh, maybe we could do a duet. No, I'm not. So moving, I really want to keep that energy going throughout the program. So feel free to stand up, interact, engage, really continue to honor Black History Month at the Village of Oak Park. With that, I will turn it over to Principal Parker, who will be our next speaker regarding honoring youth. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Walker. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I just say, all right, Miss Indy. All right. She makes me want to pick my violin back up too. I was like, see, that could have been my future. See, I didn't see it, and so now I see it. I can do that. Good afternoon, everyone. I am the proud principal at Oak Park River Forest High School, and I'm so glad to see you all today. I was really excited when I was asked to honor the youth. And the one question I had for Dr. Walker, I was like, let me make sure I'm on the same page as you, because I want to make sure we're honoring the same way. And she's like, yeah, that's it, okay. The one thing I know for sure is that after 30 years in education, that as we age, we start to forget what it was like. So I'm going to shuttle you back in time a little bit so you can be thinking about your childhood as I talk about mine as a little girl raised on the south side of Chicago. And just trying to figure life out, because most of the kids that I work with at the high school level are just trying to figure it out and get to where we want them to be and to be proud of themselves as they do that. And so one of the things I always tell people, I'm like, remember, 14, 15, 16, and 17 is the same as it was when we were 14, 15, 16, 17. It just doesn't look the same when you're up here, right? So I'm going to take you back for a little bit to this little girl who I was the third child of 3. I was my parents' last chance to get a son, and I was not. So the name Linda Joy came up as they were in the hospital because they were like, it's a girl. And when you are the third child of a mother who was from Mississippi, she came up to Chicago with her family after her father found a place for her to be with her other brothers and sisters. And then my dad, who was a Chicago police officer, mom worked in the Chicago Public Schools as a clerk. And what she knew for sure was that her children had to make it in the United States of America. And she found it very important to give any opportunity and every opportunity that she could with limited resources to make that happen. And I was just along for the ride. And so I remember in elementary school, this was a time when they were trying to desegregate the schools in Chicago. And so they would bus me from 8900 South to 7000 North in order to get an education in Rogers Park in a school that was predominantly Jewish. And I was just along for the ride. I was just trying to figure out who I was, figure out what I was supposed to be in this environment, and just try to make my parents proud while making mistakes, because kids will make mistakes. That's what we do. And we are here as the adults to make sure we redirect that path and have empathy in order to grow us up to becoming the adults we know we can be. And so I remember when I was 12, my mother found a church. And she told me about this church on the south side of Chicago, a little bit more south than we were, that had a black liberation theology. And I was like, I'm curious, I want to go, I want to see. And so she took me on Sunday. Church started at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I'm going to go, I'm in. And this was on the way to this church becoming a mega church. So by the time we got there, it was hard to get a seat sometimes, because the pastor was teaching us how to love ourselves through the lessons within the Bible, but then also within relating it to life today. Well, when this was in the 90s, or 80s and 90s. And so I was just like, okay, as a child I was interested because he was teaching me how to love myself and to understand that even though I was not a Jewish person from Rogers Park, that I was good enough to be who I was all by itself. So he would teach us about how to be unashamedly black while being an unapologetically Christian. And when I was 12, I didn't understand it, but I knew that these people around me loved me. And we would do youth church, we would do usher board. I just wanted to spend all my time in this place where these adults challenged me and pushed me while being a lazy kid. I was a lazy kid. I was like, no, why? Don't push me. Oh, it's so much work. But they knew they had to stay on me, because by staying on me, they knew where I would be eventually. But you gotta keep pouring into me while I'm that lazy kid and saying, we're not going to just settle for this. So I remember when we had, they needed a speaker to do, to recite the creation, which is a poem. For those who know that. It's a long poem, especially for a kid. And at my, with the youth and the people who were over us, we were not allowed to just set the bar low. So when you have to recite, you have to learn it. You didn't get to read off the paper. You had to learn the, and so that was my first, what? I got to memorize it? Okay, that's fine. But then when I would practice it in front of the minister who was with the youth church, she was like, no, you're not giving it with feeling. And I was like, feeling? Like, it's the story of the creation. What do you mean in there feeling it? She's like, no, you got to make people feel the words. You got to make sure they hear and feel the words. And so here I am at like 15, like I got to feel and hear the word, and I would just keep practicing it at home. I was just memorizing and learning it. And then had to present it in front of our entire congregation. It was at least 500 people, right? And so I was just like, oh, I can do this, I can make this happen. And then I just did it. And while I was doing this, somebody else was dancing to give a dance performance to the words that I was actually saying. And so in concert, I began to work the words with the person who was dancing in there, and it was just powerful. And the entire church just seemed moved, and everybody else was like, I get it now. And then the young lady who was supposed to do it for the 11 o'clock service did not show up, and they told me I had to do it again. I was like, oh my goodness! But it was okay, because they had prepared me with what I needed to be successful in that journey. I knew I wasn't alone, even though I stood there by myself to do it. They set the bar high. The bar was set high, and I had to reach the bar. And the blessing of my life is that I met and I interacted with so many other people on my journey who did that and continue to do that. Why do I say this? Because it is tiresome to build a person. If you think about the kids you've raised or the children sitting next to you or the time, you got to put in the time. And if you don't put in the time, you won't see the result. And so when I walk into school, as my superintendent will say, because he's always like, you got to take care of yourself. We got to take care of the babies. Because the babies are the only way we secure our future in this town, in this country, in this world. So the time we put in has to be valuable, and we've got to set the bar high. And so when I look into the faces of our young people, they're just trying to get it right. And I honor them every day that they hit the road on that journey, because they're dealing with so much uncertainty, so much doubt, and believe it or not, they don't have many rights yet because they live with you. So I remember this, right? I remember being a kid saying, if I just had my own stuff and could make my own decisions, then it would be perfect. So they're just trying to navigate that. They don't mean to do things that disrupt the household. We're just learning. And as we learn, we will get better. But set the bar high. That does not mean, well, we're just going to leave the house and let them tear it up because, that's what they do. No. Like, we set the bar high of what we expect, and we will reach the bar because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that is every single individual who is a being. They all have worth, they all have meaning, but we have to believe in them. So it's very, very important that time when you're like, I don't feel like it, I don't want to say the thing, I don't want to do the thing, just want to lay here, I just want it to be quiet. Do the thing. Say the thing. You don't know where that's taking that young person, who then, through saying the creation in front of the congregation twice, decided at that point it's very important that the elders and the people who poured into me know that I'm going to do them right so that I will reach to go to college. And I will get to college and finish when there's so many reasons not to finish. And then I'll come out and do what I said I'd do, which is go into education. And then I'll make sure that the kids start to learn and love math because they can do it. Even though everybody hates math, we can do this. And then in encouraging them to do that math and to be that person, maybe they just need me to talk a little bit more about what's happening in their lives. I can be that school counselor who can make sure that they understand, don't give up. It is hard, it is challenging, but keep pushing, keep pushing. Nothing worth having is easy. And then once I stopped as a counselor, somebody says, you should be an administrator. I'm like, why would I do that? What do they touch kids? Do they work with kids? Okay, fine, I'll get the licensing. And then you become an assistant principal. But you still keep your hands on the kids because if somebody else is not going to do it, you got to make sure they know they can do it. And then you just keep pushing, and then eventually, one day, you end up at Oak Park and River Forest High School, and someone says, you might be able to do this work and help us to make sure that we're pushing our kids to where they can go. And I say, sign me up. Because we can do it. So I say to every young person in here today, you are doing the thing. You are Miss Wendy Indy. You can be Wendy Indy. That's when I see her, I know all things are possible. Because she tore it up on a violin. In heels. You can do this. And whenever you feel unsure of yourself, you've got to make sure that you not touch on the person who is your trusted adult who tells you, you got this. It's hard, but it's not impossible. And to every adult in here, I say, it is our duty. We brought them here because that was my biggest question when I was a kid. Why am I here? We brought them here. We owe it to them to make it possible for them to succeed while they're here because we know how hard it is and we know how hard it continues to be. So we've got to pump them up and make them understand that they can do anything and all things, and we're going to give them what's necessary to do it. I believe in all of you. I'm charging all of you to do this because one day I'm going to ask you to volunteer in our hallways up at the high school to come help me save 3,000 kids. But thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Dr. Walker, this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Superintendent Johnson reminds me that for you all may not be aware, this is our Principal of the Year. How fitting during Black History Month. So with our corresponding performance for honoring youth, I believe they don't need no formal introduction and give you all Kupa Kids.
You can keep singing it. I'm sorry, here I go. All right, well, good afternoon to everybody that is here. Good afternoon, good afternoon. We are Kuumba Kids. Kuumba Kids is an arts and education program that is here in Oak Park. We have been around for 17 years. Each year we have a gigantic Black History Month program called Harambe at Longfellow Elementary School, which is 715 South Highland. This year, our program will be on February the 24th. It starts at 6:30. We have vendors, you can do some shopping, you can come out, you can see Caribbean dance, hip hop, West African poetry, song, music, a fashion show, art. It's going to be amazing. But today, I am here with you. And we are here honoring youth, and that is what I do. I am a dance teacher full-time. I'm a dance educator. Sorry, someone corrected me last week. I'm a dance educator, and I go into the city of Chicago and I teach dance either as a specials program or as part of a high school gym program. So you're gonna clap for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Don't speed it up. 1, 2. I'm just saying. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're gonna add a beat, right? So you're gonna go right foot first. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, Yes. So the rhythm for Manjani sounds like this. All right. So in traditional West African dance, we do not count 5, 6, 7, 8. We don't say, well, do this step 4 times, then switch and do their dancing. We're enjoying ourselves, but we still have to listen because our drummer signals to us, our djembe drummer, when to start, when to change, and when to stop. So we go off of something called the break, right? And the break for this particular dance sounds like this. 1. Play it again. 1. Here we go. So every time you hear the 1 from the break, I want you to clap on the
I'm going to introduce our next speaker around voice. So please, yeah, I'll turn it over to him. Thank you.
How y'all doing? Oh, so my name is Geronimo Speaks. I am a spoken word artist, and I have two of my mentees here with me. And we are going to give you voice today. I find this amazing. Just like Principal Parker, I am also from the south side of Chicago. And just like Principal Parker, my mother had 3 daughters, but like they didn't stop. Yeah. They had me. And so I grew up in a house on the south side, in the projects actually, on the south side of Chicago, without a father figure, in a house full of feminine energy. And at times I felt myself not being able to have a voice, not knowing who I was as a young male trying to understand. And spoken word poetry is the first thing like I was able to write what I felt inside. Like I couldn't voice it, but when I picked up a pen or a pencil, I was able to put that down. And then as the years go along, the maturity set in, I was able to deal with mental health through my pen. I was able to look at how powerful the voice was, i.e. words were. Even back in the slavery days, when they went to stop the slaves from rising up, they would take these slaves from different tribes, and then they would intermingle them, put them, so they could communicate. And of course, we are our ingenuity. We would create dances and things of that nature. Or when you had a runaway slave, they would create songs. Wade in the water, they would tell you that would be our map to get to the north for freedom. Words have been a powerful instrument for years upon years. Spoken word artists, we are the storytellers of history. We are the griots. We are the unsung voices in history. And I'm happy to be able to come here and talk to you guys and give you guys our history. What I'm most passionate about, okay? All right, cool. No. So I was a little nervous because you did so amazing. I was like, her energy is crazy. It's like how I'm supposed to go up after that. That's amazing. So one of my first mentees that I am bringing up to the stage, his name is Big Cino. I had the pleasure of working with this young king during the summertime through collaboration theater. I taught him, he already was talented. I just kind of helped him put some structure to his artistry, to his spoken word. He has done a lot within the realm of activism. He has done interviews. He attacked racism. He's a well-known spoken word artist throughout Chicago. He hosts different events for the youth, and I'm happy to be able to call him my mentee. I want y'all to give it up for Big Cino.
Thank y'all. First things first, I want to say with this event, it has definitely fed a lot of my curiosity and a lot of research I do on my own with my family and such. So thank you all for having us, first of all. Thank you all. This has been amazing for me so far. And secondly, I want to talk a little bit before I perform my piece. I also grew up on the south side of Chicago in a pretty much predominantly black neighborhood. And until I got into high school, I had good enough grades to get into a pretty good high school, and I moved in with my grandmother because it was way closer to the school I got accepted into, and that neighborhood was not black at all. In fact, I am still the only black kid in that neighborhood, and that sort of kind of culture shift taught me a lot growing up. So this piece titled "Bright Boy" is about that experience, and I hope you all enjoy it. What allows you to see at night? Christmas decorations, street lamps in your neighborhood? Cause we got youngins lighting up our blocks. So I hop on tracks to get away with no light at the end of the tunnel. So no plight if you fold, if you stumble, you're never to dream so big. But this wick on my candle burns for fantasy. Can't be snuffed out, won't become content for me. This ray of hope pulls me from trials and tribulations, away from darkness and expectations, though I've been every connotation of both. The bright kid, you a star, you gon' make it far. Show 'em who you are, bright boy. How you get like this, bright boy? Why you talk like this, bright boy? Why you talk so bright, boy? Youngins that will smith you, but they ain't acting no bright, boy. No flashes for your entrance. They take our light and put them in prisons. Cause how can you shine in a black hole? We take our light and put them through prisms. Reflecting, refracting on set goals. Being told not to waste time. Being sure everybody hates Chris until he let it shine. That's what Will was banned for. How can he be like that when these other artists are so pure? Being dimmed by constructs that can't take the heat. That's why Jasmine was up in the stars, being shown a whole new world, singing songs. But Tiana, of course, she'd be happy staying a frog. And if we make any buzz about it, we'll be light years before we receive any shine. And they know that we know, so why fight it, bright boy? A bunch of strays or rays can compete with the sun, bright boy. So enjoy the show, eat the chips, enjoy the moment in the sun before you get eclipsed, bright boy. I tell them, we are the screen, the sun, and the lights, and we burn bright, boy. Thank you. You can follow me on anything at Big Cino or Big _Cino, double G's, and thank you all.
Give it a little more time for Big Cino. So this next young queen I have the pleasure of mentoring. She has a slam history with poetry. She came up, such as myself, in Louder Than a Bomb, Young Chicago Authors. I used to do that, but I'm like a decade ahead of her. But when I first heard her, I was like, hey, I would like to, hone in on some of your talents and gifts and push you in, and just her message was just overwhelming and powerful, and I'm happy that she agreed, and so I want y'all to give it up for Vay Shakur.
Hello, how's everyone feeling? Great. When I say feeling good, can y'all say feeling great, feeling good? Feeling great. Feeling good? Feeling great. Feeling good? Feeling great.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having us. I'm so ecstatic to be here. It's been a beautiful event, beautiful performers. I love it so much.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
So, my name is Vay Shakur. How's everybody? So I just want to tell y'all, is anybody familiar with Black Superwoman syndrome? So, for those who are not, basically it's this idea that Black women feel like they always have to be strong. They never can they can't depend on anybody. They can't break down. They have to be this super person, right, to handle everything. And as a mother myself, when I was thinking about the things that I want to raise my daughter to be, and I had to turn around and look inward, right? I have to look inward to see what skills can I impart on her. And I realized I am a woman. I am a woman influenced and shaped, twisted, cultured, cultivated, nurtured. I'm a melting pot of style. A river flowing in two directions, curves, one side of the bottom, beehive, buzzing full of stinging nectar, the bittersweet taste of raspberry lips. I am a woman. Wind dancer. A 204-pound mass, 5'8", brown skin, head full of messy hair, 4B. I speak pro-B. I speak pro-black, proper, a bag of rainbow Skittles packed with consonants, pocket full of syllables. This pot of gold is for colored girls only, the ones representing Moja. Overflowing with semantics. My mother taught me speech with no language. And a 10 by 10 foot space half filled with books, read 3 times over half, Bratz dolls and dog fur. My mother raised Catholic, Muslim Christianity, overflowing with semantics. A 5'8" venti cup of dark coffee, extra Merca, and I heard it said that black coffee should not be sweet. She is woman. She is Black Aphrodite. I was taught that my black woman should succumb to stereotype. I was taught that black superwoman syndrome is something that should apply to make myself ordinary. Like it's not normal for drops of riverborn sadness to fall from the creases in the earth's soil, like black mothers should expect to lose their sons and 17 years later have their birth certificate become part 2 to their eulogy, like it's only natural to treat hey black child to every black student because we all know that society will always condition their mind to think that lighter is prettier. Like it's better to have the white Barbie because the Barbie that look like me just ain't pretty enough. Like it wasn't homemade and baked into our childhood. Mailman, do your duty. Here comes a lady with an African booty pop. Bet you ain't know we were taught to get used to being neat. Bet you ain't know we were taught to speaking proper because of white chick. But look at our classmates to see our black getting appropriated, self-conditioning ourselves to lighten the race so that maybe our kids can get a taste of what it's like to have a privileged lifestyle, interested in the struggles of our race, only to turn around and say, it ain't that deep. But you try building a foundation from the bones up, to be bonded and changed, forged from your culture, only to be viewed as entertainment like Saturday Bartman. I mean, Hottentot Venus. I mean, original black sex object, thick booty, wide hips made into an attraction. One of 2 freak shows, once praised and now offensive. A black woman was never considered human to begin with. But don't get me wrong. I am a woman. Influenced and shaped, twisted, culture cultivated. A river flowing in 2 directions, twice the curves, no denial that I am extraordinary.
Hello, time for basic tour. I'm standing up here breathing, I'm so proud. And as far as myself, I am a national spoken word, award-winning spoken word artist. I am currently nominated as Chicago Poet Laureate, nominated Chicago Spoken Word Artist of the Year by the 312 Music Award. Thank you. I performed with the likes of Michelle Obama at On the Hill with Jack and Jill. Tamika Mallory. I am a full-time spoken word artist. I love this. This is my passion. I teach spoken word. I'm an instructor at W.E.B. Du Bois, 4th through 7th grade. And I'm going to give you guys my piece. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. I want to know what's in my soul. It's undescribable. Scribes and scrolls, massive droves of blacks in coal, magic crypts of black Egyptians, fragile pictures of African lynchers. I'm from a block where they makes a lot, but never makes a lot. Then they confuse with blonde dreads. I'm God body, arm, leg, arm, head. Bronze feet means bronze legs. Hair wool means bronze head. That means it's in my pigmentation to be God-led. Nah, y'all don't get it. What's in the pencil, God uses to write scriptures and create pictures. I'm God's-led, and you can't pencil sharpen the sharpest artist. Mixed with little Huey, Stokely, and Sharpton. So pardon, I'm a soldier without a cause. Huey P. in a stroke chair with a black hat and a black burner. Give me the Quran, I've been Malcolm. Bible, I've been Nat Turner. So I'm praying to God to give me the vision to separate fact from fictitious, taking hieroglyphs and hieroglyphics. Because it's not impossible when you God's pupil to see through God's pupils, but because of this brown iris, blind hatred because of my likeness, and it's like him. I used to be a monster, slave to the underworld like a lichen, devil one sitting on my head like a Viking, but I was moving backwards. Every plus was a minus, but as soon as I met God, I became a Midas, and I began to walk like a titan. But they want to peg me as a barbarian. I won't believe I'm an African born again American. Wait. An African born again American? Wait. See, just because you give me a social security number, that don't mean I'm any less Africa. That just means I'm secure while being social in America. Let's clear it up. Y'all got that. So, just because you give me a social security number, that don't mean I'm any less Africa. That just means I'm secure while being social in America. Let's clear it up. They said action, instruction, intelligence, and we ain't scared enough. I'm a Garveyite mixed with a Marley soundbite. And I barely sound nice because I'm barely awoke. But just know, we ain't come from the same tribe. We ain't speak the same dialect. We ain't have the same wealth. But we dang sure came on the same boat. And I got the blues. Thank you.
All I can say is, wow, this is truly amazing. So the story of Black History Month began in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States, when Harvard historian Dr. Carter Woodson, known as the father of Black history, and prominent minister Jesse Moreland, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History as an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements of Black Americans. Mr. Woodson chose February as a month to celebrate Black history. He stated his intention to encourage people of all ethnic and social backgrounds to discuss the Black experience, knowing that without truth, the journey to equality of Black Americans would not prevail. While Black history is celebrated in other countries, it is still not accurately and consistently taught across the United States, in our schools and our communities. The Association for the Study of African American Life and History continues to organize with the mission to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information about Black life, history, and culture to the global community. Each year, the association identifies a theme for Black History Month. This year's theme, resistance. As I quote from the association website, the words of President W. Marvin Delaney captures the ongoing necessity of African Americans to resist oppression, subjugation, second-class citizenship, and racial violence. Since 1619, while the methods and means of Black resistance have varied, resistance has always been, resistance has always been a part of the African American experience. It is our duty to not just celebrate Black history as a national holiday, but to consciously and intentionally seek out truth, furthering our education of the Black experience in our community and country, and spend time with that learning, is that we can embrace, lift up, and celebrate Black excellence every day, without fear or defensiveness. I am grateful for Black residents and leadership in Oak Park who share of themselves every day, believing Oak Park can do better. I am grateful for all those who have contributed past and present so that we can strive for shared ownership and racial justice and equality in our village. Looking at the people out here are the people that I'm speaking of. Wanda Griffin, Linda Francis, Ishatanya Johnson, Lucia, Athena, Dr. Walker, thank you so much. And Kevin Jackson, thank you for choosing Oak Park. Sorry, we do have another trustee who is part of our wonderful history, and I see Camille Wilson-White as well, too. You do so much for our community, thank you. Mark Blessoff, the chair of our Aging in Place Commission, also a past trustee, making all of those before us part of who we are today.
I will introduce our next speaker, Wanda Griffin. I just want to say really quickly, Wanda came in early to help, and it takes a community, and I am so grateful for that, as I am still brand new to Oak Park, and just the community and the connections and just the warm welcome. So Wanda has been such a big part of that. So thank you so much, and thank you for agreeing to speak today.
Good afternoon. So, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I'm lying. Every time somebody hits the mic, they say, I'm not going to take too much of your time. That means they're going to take a lot of your time. But I'll take my time because I didn't write a speech when I was struggling with resistance and what it means and how to package it for Oak Parkers, because you know we are a special bunch of Oak Park folk. We are special, and we have to really be considerate when we're coming before my people, my village. Now, I'm from Oak Park. I'm not from the south side. I'm not from the west side. I'm from Oak Park since 1976. And growing up in Oak Park has been an experience, especially growing up in the late 70s in Oak Park, coming through Longfellow, Percy Julian, Oak Park River Forest High School, home of the Huskies. It's been special and filled with resistance, right? And so resistance is my legacy. Resistance is something that I inherited in my DNA. It's encoded and encrypted in me. My ancestors didn't give me wealth. They didn't give me land. They didn't leave me things to sell for monetary use, but they left me resistance, and resistance has been my wealth. So, before I move on and say another word, I want to invite my ancestors in this space, and this is how we're going to do this. If you are a black person of a diaspora, I invite you to stand right now in this room. And how we do this is we call out the name of our ancestors because I want them to move through this room and support me and support us and to be a part of this program. I want to invite my ancestors into the program. And you just will say the name of anyone that has passed in your family that you consider to be an ancestor. You just say their name out loud. And I'm going to start with someone who's not in my family, but whose shoulders I proudly stand on, Dolores Register. So I have said her name in this space, and then the next person can say whomever that comes to their mind.
Mary Frances Middlebrooke.
Rosetta Green. Nathaniel Coleman.
Amanda Boozer.
Charlie Thomas.
Herbert Davis.
Nina Pavard.
Zella Parker.
Cyrus King.
Phyllis Logan.
Catherine Harris.
Rosemary Jackson.
Patricia Miller. Vivian McFadden.
Xavier Nadasenga. Doesn't have to be in a row. Thank you.
Natalie Miller. Ruthie Johnson. S.A. Trammell. Willie McNash. Laura Green.
Is there someone behind you? And now that we've invited our ancestors to space, I feel comfortable with continuing on. Thank you so much. So, resistance is courage. Resistance is vulnerability. Resistance is being up at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what resistance means to me. So I was an obstinate child, and I don't know how many of you have encountered obstinate children growing up. They're not always doing what they should be doing, not always where they should be, not always saying the things they should say. And the first thing most folk do, especially when I was coming up, is they try to make obstinate children behave. You want them to sit down and be quiet and hold still and not go too far, and because you don't want them to harm themselves and you don't want them to embarrass you and you don't want them to do all the things that obstinate children do. But sometimes in teaching our children to behave, we can damage their spirit, we can break their spirit, because we don't know what that child will need to go over the obstacles that they have to face in their life. And so we must be careful with obstinate children, because what you're doing is you're talking to a leader. You're talking to a scientist. You're talking to a president. You're dealing with someone who will one day hold authority. So be careful with obstinate children, because those children, the ones that are the hardest for us to deal with, are often the ones whose light will shine the brightest, who are often the ones who will pave the way for everyone else. We have to be careful with children we deem obstinate. And that's resistance. When children are resistance, that's defiance. And sometimes we don't always look at it the right way. if I would have been in trouble for, and I was in trouble a lot, I was punished all the time. Mommy, you know it to be true. But I was very strong-willed. I was a strong-willed little girl. And so I remember in 1991 when Rodney King was assaulted. And I remember watching it. That was the first glimpse of police brutality that I'd seen in my life. I think I was 16 when this happened. And I remembered in my abstinence telling the 1992 class of Oak Park and River Forest High School that we're going to have a sit-in because we want to make sure that our police force is listening to us and that this does not happen in our community. And then I remember Dr. Gustafson, who was then the superintendent of the high school, saying, if you all sit in, you won't graduate. So I was like, okay, we won't sit in. Okay, we won't sit in. We'll walk out. And so I remember being in a hallway, walking that hallway, getting everybody to cue. We gonna walk out, y'all. We gonna walk out. And I didn't know how many people would do it, so I told the Students for Peace and Justice, which was a group then, we gonna walk out. So everybody's like, we gonna walk out. Man, when those doors opened and those 800 students walked out and we walked down Lake Street and we walked all the way to the Village Hall, our Village Hall opened the courtroom for us to hold a forum on police brutality. I don't know how many people remember that. I don't know if anyone, if there's documentation, because there were no cell phones then. And it was hundreds of us in this room, in this space. And then my husband saw all of this. He was my boyfriend then. But he saw all of this movement going on. And he said, that's going to be my wife. That woman right there. Resistance is vital to the survival of Black folks. It's vital. When you break a bone and it heals harder than it did the first time. So let's talk about broken bones and healing. So I did write this down about wound healing, inflammation, the inflammation stage, the proliferative stage, and the remodeling stage when something is healing. So when you get an injury, that's the inflammation stage. When the blood rushes up and then a scab forms right there and cells are regenerated and all of that. And then you go into the proliferative stage where there's new blood vessels and there are new tissues forming. Then you go to the remodeling stage where there's scar tissue and it pushes away that old scar and it's able to heal, and it heals better than it did before. Those are 3 stages of healing. Well, sometimes with racism in our country, it doesn't get to go through the 3 stages of healing because we cover it up. And when you cover up a wound, what happens? No oxygen gets through it. No scar is scabbed. It's just covered. It's still there. It festers, and it becomes an infection. And so that's how racism has operated in our systems, interpersonally, institutionally, systemic. It's all through our government. It's all through our schools. It's all through our community. So we want to make sure that we allow oxygen to hit this wound so that it can heal. And I think programs like this, thank you, Dr. Walker, programs like the ones that are going on at your local library. By the way, my name is Wanda Griffin. I'm the Multicultural Learning Coordinator at the Oak Park Public Library. So when you start taking up space and you start discussing the things that folk are not comfortable with talking about, you allow a healing to come that hasn't come in our nation. It hasn't come when it comes to dealing with racism. People don't want to be uncomfortable. People don't like to be called out. That's why there's been a concerted effort to make sure that our history isn't taught in schools, because it makes folk uncomfortable. But if you're not uncomfortable, you can't heal. And we need a healing. And so I am invested in this community in Oak Park. I'm so Oak Park. I love my community. And I will call any elected official or anybody else on the carpet about my community because I love it. And so I don't allow it to fester. I don't allow the wounds to fester because I want it to grow and I want it to heal. So I show up at school boards where my children aren't even in school, like D200 and D97 sometimes. I mean, I show up at those things because all the children are important in this village in order for us to move forward. So the next phase, what else want to tell y'all about? Covered that. I was on speech team. Don't tell Pat Cheney that I did this. So when we honor resistance,
we actually are able to move closer to inclusion, to move closer to diversity, because that's the goal, right? So we might say we want to honor resistance. We want to also, it speaks to what we value. So we honor resistance, but it speaks to what we value as a community. And in doing so, we show up at places like this. We show up at Sankofa. We support all these other things, and we are not afraid to do the work. And in doing the work, that's my segue. This is how I'm leaving. Step on over here. This is how I'm leaving, y'all. The work continues. And there is an exhibit right now going on at your local Oak Park Library called The Work. And it's a chronicle of the Black history in Oak Park. And I invite you all to come and see it so that you can read the names of people in your community who have worked to do this work. People like Edie Burton, because she was missing the first time, but she's there now. People like Dolores Register, Betty Wilson, people like Lou Pope, people like Rod Simmons, and our new executive director who's sitting in the back right now, Jocelyn Boland-Dixon. We have so many Black folk in the last 3 years that are doing great things in Oak Park. I did not meet you, sis, but we gotta hang out. I like you. So I got all these school people that I get to hang out with. I mean, and the list continues. We did a big push. The board is doing amazing things. Vicki, I'm so proud of you. So we're doing these wonderful things, but the work still continues, and we need everyone in the village to continue on work to continue this work with us. I'm honoring resistance. I'm honoring silence right now by closing. Thank you so much.
We're going to turn it over to our next performer regarding honoring resistance.
Hello, beautiful people.
Hello.
My name is Mara Love, and I'm sad that I missed like most of this event, but you all look nice. I came in, y'all had music going and stuff. I called and I could hear it. I was like, I'm missing it. I need to hurry up. And I have lovely Rose accompanying me today. We're gonna sing some songs for you guys, okay? These were highly requested. Let's do Young Gifted and Black first. Young Gifted and Black. I know a lot of people in here probably know this song. So if you know the words better than I do, act like you do. Young, gifted and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. To be young, gifted and black. Open your heart to what I mean. In a whole world, you know, there's a million boys and girls who are young, young, gifted and black, and that's a fact. Young, gifted and black, we must begin to tell our young there's a world waiting for you. Yours is the quest that's just begun. When you're feeling really low, there's a great truth that you should know. To be young, gifted, and black, ooh, that's where it's at. How to be young, gifted, and black. Oh, how I long to know the truth. There are times when I look back and I am haunted by my youth. Oh, but my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, to be young, gifted, and black is where it's at. It's where it's at. We've got one more song that was requested. I really like this song. I hope you like this song, and I hope that touches you today. This is our month, y'all. It's our year, 24/7. You know. Alright, don't cry with me. You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fire, but I see it in you, and we gon' walk it out and move mountains. We can walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, oh, high like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, I know you feel like dying, but I promise I'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. Bring it to its feet and move mountains. And we'll rise up, rise like the day. We'll rise up and rise unafraid. We'll rise up and we'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, oh, high like the waves. Said I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. I'll rise up, high like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the pain. I'll rise up, but I'll do it 1,000 times again. Ooh, I'll rise up, and high like the waves. I'll rise up, and in spite of the fame, I'll rise up, but I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you.
Mara Love asked us not to cry, and I'm a little choked up. So it was just so moving. So thank you. Another round of applause. All right. We are moving into our last honor category around solidarity. And I am Oh, maybe it was that correct? Am I appropriate?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, wait. I got to look from Cassandra, and I was like, wait a minute. Did I speak too soon? But it's been such a wonderful event, and just so many great speakers and performers, and I am really excited for looking for our next speaker around honoring solidarity.
Thank you, Mara. That was beautiful. Hi, everyone. I'm Dot Lamshed Roach. I'm deeply grateful and admittedly was a little unsure about taking the podium at a Black History Month event. So thank you, Dr. Walker, for this invitation. I'm one of the founding members and executive director of Race Conscious Dialogues, a local nonprofit and community resource that began as an upswell in Oak Park in 2017, and of course the impetus of leadership was from brilliant Black women. Some of the other community initiatives that are important to me are Kinfolk Collab, a place for elevating, celebrating, and advocating for Black folks in the community, and local work for reparations. Solidarity emerges from being in community. The more time we spend together and genuinely know one another, the clearer we're able to see what is and move forward with what can be, finding ways to best plug in and support community equity efforts. There's not one right way, right? There's many avenues. Quiet, steady labor that sustain movements, bold public actions that propel us collectively forward, literally standing with someone in the midst of a racist storm. Solidarity is both a mindset, a state of being, a way of life, and it's also specific moments that impact real human beings in ongoing and committed ways. It's reliability. Reliability cultivates trust. It's how we show up and that we show up time and time again. We used to just call it, I got your back, right? And knowing that you'd have mine. There's some useful frameworks on the topic. Dictionary.com says that solidarity is a noun, but we know it to be a verb. The actions that we take, it's not what we think or a position we have on a social issue or even a value that we hold. Solidarity is not theory, it's praxis. It's what we do. We don't have to say that we stand with those who are hurting if our lives and our actions demonstrate it. Another framework on solidarity is distinguishing it from charity, where even a situation of helping, there can be saviorism and paternalism and hierarchical power versus solidarity, horizontal, shared power, united in purpose, not doing something for others, but working with others. One thing I've learned is that proclaiming we are in solidarity is not enough. We don't get to self-appoint or self-designate on the matter. Immediately following the presidential election of 2016, the safety pin movement emerged. Millions started wearing safety pins as symbols of allyship in the wake of hate-filled rhetoric. I wanted to be an ally too. So I put a little pin on my coat, and then I thought, well, how could anyone see this little thing? So I went to my mother's house and asked if I could borrow from one of her kilts, like the Scottish, the bagpiper kilts with the biggest safety pin that you ever saw. And I put it on my coat. I missed the mark, friends. I began to realize that it was not mine to decide whether or not I was someone to be trusted. With all my good intentions, I began to understand that I needed to do better and engage in some self-reflection to ensure my concrete actions were aligned with the values that I professed by wearing that pin. This process of ongoing inner work, examining how I might be complicit in systems of oppression, remaining hyper-aware of my programming and my socialization as a white woman, attuned to moments when racism is in play, understanding that accountability is required in situations of harm. All essential for true solidarity. Our inner work informs our outer work. Solidarity in action is the best of who we are, Oak Park. When all persons can be their full selves, when all persons celebrate Black history and excellence, receiving the gifts and learning from incredible Black leaders who have been doing this work in our community for years, decades. We are shaping each other and inspiring each other and standing with each other. We belong to one another. Solidarity is connection, friendship, and at the root, it is love. In the wisdom and truth of Audre Lorde, we don't need to be like one another to work together for a future we all deserve. Happy Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dad. What just a great way to honor solidarity as we're thinking about Black History Month. As you all may see on your tables, that Black history is American history, that how we're all connected and united as we build a better, stronger, more inclusive tomorrow. So thank you, Dad, for really encapsulating all of those elements in your speech. So thank you. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our next performer. Going to be honoring solidarity.
West Africa. There's many yes answers, and that is in the list of them. Yes. All right, so now it turns out that in the 12th century, in what was then called the Malian Empire in West Africa, this is before countries were in Africa at all. That didn't happen until the Berlin Conference in 1884, where the official lines were drawn. So at the time where Djembe was happening, there weren't no countries. It was just the Malian Empire. So in this place, it was the women that created the music with this ancient instrument.
And it was the women that created the songs with this ancient instrument. And why did the women create the rhythms and the songs? And I can say from personal experience that I've learned a lot from women that they'll look. I'll be ready to go out, I'll have some stuff on. What do you think? No. What do you mean? No, trust me. And I'm right, I trust them and they're always right. So what does that mean? To me that means there's a sense of, oh, this needs to happen this way in this situation. And I feel that first woman that created the first rhythm and song in this area of the Malian Empire in the 12th century. Let's say y'all are farmers. It's a big agriculture area. Y'all are farmers, right? And it's in the southern part of the Sahel, which is that border region between Sahara and sub-Saharan Africa. It's desert climate. It's hot. Oh, you're farming. You're not. And look, do you have a combine? No. You know what I mean? You're lucky to have an ox. It's hard, is what I'm saying. So the women see this and say, toiling in the sun, and women started to come. Okay, if they don't work well, it's going to affect all of us. This is not, farming ain't no single job. It's not all about the farmer. It's a collective effort. You got to come together in solidarity to make sure that happens because everybody has a stake in it. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, now. So now, the women, they see this. They start singing. Maybe one song. Say, Ela wili wo konko daba, kondo ti ubanana. Ela wili wo konko daba, kondo kola sanake la ubanana. That's a song I learned from Grandmaster drummer Mamadi Keita. It talks about, come on, farmer, it's time to get up. Come on, successful farmer, try to do the thing. So now, taking it back to our program. You're out in the field and you're toiling, bam, bam, I'm a woman, it's the 12th century, all right? I see you out there and I do this. And then suddenly I'm singing a song. And you're out there, here's you. You're out there. And suddenly you say, that's kind of catchy. It's a sing to me. It's a song about me. I'm happy. Who doesn't get happy gets to sing a song about you, right? So now we got a happy grooving farmer out there. And now you look at the horizon, now we got a bunch of grooving farmers out. And that's all together. What did they do? One of the things they did by this act was make a singularity that reached as far as the sound could reach. We're not in this individual. We're in this together as a collective. And that's the bam. That's it. Full stop. So the women created rhythms for all kinds of things. Farming, initiation. Important people come through the village, like y'all. That's right. And then around the same time, the caste of the blacksmiths, they're called the New Moon. They were the ones that carved the first djembe. And one of them, no one's around to tell the tale of why one blacksmith hollowed out a shell and put a skin on it, but the world heard for the first time. Now imagine, this is 12th century. This is way before planes, trains, and automobile. So the sounds that you hear at your age at this point, it's again 12th century, right? West Africa. The same sounds that your parents heard at your age. Because the sounds don't change like that. It's nature. It's nature. The same sounds that your parents heard. So to hear a new sound in a place like this, can you imagine? Man, they were animists at that time, so maybe they were thinking, is that the ground telling us it's time to till the soil? Is that the sky warning us that there's a storm coming? I've heard myth of trees dancing. Could that be this? But I imagine the blacksmith was tripping too, because and I imagine at some point the blacksmith's hands began kind of dancing, almost as if animated by an energy not their own. And over time, the sounds on it began to be a little bit clearer. People speak slower in foreign language. language, thinking that will help. Oh, boom, bay, something, right? Jumbe, jimbe, 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 jimbe. This is a jimbe. And the women said, okay, how about you take that djembe you created and you play the rhythms that we created on that and do the songs that we created on that. What do you say? And they said, okay. And that's the day the rhythms became djembe rhythms and songs became djembe songs. So you know now this djembe is from the Malian Empire, 12th century pre-colonization situation. And you know it was the women who were the architects of the music, the creation. Is it a surprise?
No.
I'm not surprised. So, let's do a little bit more here. Y'all ready? down here. Let's hear it for Marley, please. Most of the world knows about Jinbei because of this man. Not only was he a master of his craft, of an ancient tradition, but he toured the world for decades, made films about it, and did all manner of things to spread the word of Jinbei. He went even so far, this is after he was with the Ballet Joliba, the National Ballet of Guinea, for 22 years. He became their artistic director over time. He was drafted into that National Ballet at the age of 13 because he was just so known as a bam, even at that age. So now we have Mamadi going to Europe. He shows up, people are playing Jinbei in drum circles. Now I'm not a drum circle hater, I'm not a hater of any stripe. But take a traditional instrument, just go crazy on it, not knowing nothing. It's things happen that just were, let's learn the instrument first, shall we? I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Learn the thing, do what you want from the thing after learning what it is and how it speaks. So Mamadi set up shop and said, I gotta fix this. And created his school called the Tom Mandang Jinbei Academy. And then he started teaching people from all over the world. And then became branches all over the world. I'm Tom Mandang Chicago, and I'm actually the senior member of his organization. He passed to being an ancestor on June 21 of 21. What a day, right there, bam. That's Mamadi K's style. That's right. So I come here as a representative of him, his organization, myself, his music. I'm so thankful to be here with Victoria. Say hey, Victoria. One of my strongest, she's a student of mine who's come up professional now. She's pro now. She got no other job. She's doing this for real. This is a thing. I say this out loud to let you know, to tell the cosmos that this is a manifest thing. And then we have Baba PC. Let's hear from Baba PC. Many of you know Woodtree Dance Theater. He's been with them since the 19th. I got you. So it's such an honor to have such a Baba on the low end over here playing the juniors. I love it. Big love, big love, big love. All right. So ready to get back to the music? Oh wait, Sosone, oral history. This is a rhythm called Sosone. Sosone is a mask rhythm. Naga ethnic group of Western Guinea. They have this as a protector of the village and a spirit and mask that drives away evil forces. So that's what this is for. So, you know, good. Cleanse that stuff, right? Hey, all right.
Closing remarks from our village manager, Kevin Jackson. And while he's making his way up here, I just wanted to say one thing as a joke. One thing about it was me hosting a function, we're going to get out on time, okay? I got you on that, I got you. So I think I might have put village manager Kevin Jackson on the spot, but I just wanted to try an opportunity to just have some closing remarks on this wonderful, wonderful event today. Thank you.
I don't know. Are we gonna get out on time?
Yeah.
We will get out. I am speechless. I mean, this was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And Dr. Parker, that story about the creation. I mean, I'm telling you, we must know each other from another world. You know? My grandmother made me do that speech. I was the shyest little boy in the church, And man, she made me do it, and I was kicking and screaming. I just got 3 questions for you guys. First of all, number 1, did you enjoy this experience? Were you moved by this experience? And lastly, did you learn from this experience? That's absolutely wonderful. So I think we accomplished the goal. So I want to say, look, this was a wonderful experience, and just in one word, what I saw on Showcase this afternoon, you know, it was a lengthy period of time. What I saw on Showcase was community. This is community. We're celebrating Black history, but we're celebrating community. And it was, man, I can't think of another time where I've seen a better showcase of that than today. And I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your Saturday to make this happen. Everybody that showed up, all of our speakers, all of our performers. I want to thank you, Dr. Walker, for moving this forward. I want to thank all of our staff. Joe, hopefully we got some good video that we can replay over and over again. And with that said, we will let you all go, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Please take the candy on the table. It was a logistic nightmare to get this candy, so take the candy. There's still our selfie station